Hey everybody, here is Damjan from the Break It Down show, and today's guest is David Best. Now, I can't resist to not make this pun and say he's truly the best. He's the frontman of one of my favorite bands called Fujiya and Miyagi, and if you didn't hear their music, you definitely should. They're an electronic band from Brighton, England, formed 19 years ago. Their song was featured in a scene of the legendary crime TV series Breaking Bad, when Jesse and Beja are cooking meth in the van in the middle of nowhere. Well, the song Vagaries of Fashion is featured in an episode of How to Get Away with Murder, so you know their music sounds awesome. You can visit them on fujiya-miyagi.co.uk and support their work. That's fujiya-miyagi.co.uk. While listening to this cool electronic music, here's what I ask you to do. Open a new tab and go to savethebrave.org. Do that today, and here's why. Today is Veterans Day, so it's symbolic if you go to that website and give these guys what they really need. And that's your support. We'd really appreciate if you support the Break It Down show too with subscribing to our podcast wherever you listen to it, and we would ask you to share it with your friends or write us a little comment. Maybe something like, this David fella has to come to my city and have a show with his band. Yeah, by the way, I saw Fujiya and Miyagi a few months ago, and I had a wonderful time. Trust me. I mean, these guys shared the stage with bands like New Order. Come on. Me and Pete sat down and had a great chat with this really cool guy called David Best. Now, without further ado, enjoy the show.
Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay
This
Moore.
is Greg Proops.
This is Jordan Harbinger.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This is
East.
Sebastian Younger.
This is Rick Marotta.
This is Stuart Copeland. This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
Hey, this is Skunk Baxter.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
Hi, this is David Best from Fujiya Miyagi, and you're listening to the Break It Down show.
And now, the Break It Down show with John Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
Yeah, this is cool, man. We've had a lot of musicians on, and it's always great to get musicians from around the world. You're obviously British, so I want to get into a little bit of that. For some reason, bands in Great Britain don't always translate over here to the U.S. where I'm at, but you might translate over to where, because Damjan's co-hosting and he produced this episode, you might translate over to Macedonia. When bands from Great Britain don't hop over, like Paul Weller's probably the best example. He's such a huge guy in the UK, but he can barely even tour over here because he's playing small venues. It's just not worth his time, you know?
Oh, wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and equally, people like Tom Petty, who's massive over there, doesn't translate really here.
What do you make of that?
There must be something ingrained in a country's musical psyche that doesn't like Tom Weller and Paul Weller and Tom Petty.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just odd, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is odd. It doesn't make sense. Elvis Costello has sort of done it, you know, like he's very well known, but he's more underground over here. Is Elvis Costello huge in the UK, would you say?
He's highly respected, I think.
Yeah.
When he first came out, because obviously it was like post-punk or new wave, he was kind of thought of quite edgy.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's really respected. I'm sure he could sell out shows quite easily.
Yeah. Hi from me. I'm happy to welcome you on the Break It Down show. And a month ago, I was on a festival in Skopje called Strava Mladi. And there was a local band playing on the stage. They're called RIP.
Yeah.
And they came to the end of their show, and suddenly David Best from Fujiya and Miyagi gets on stage to perform their featuring song. Yeah, the song is called Rotator. And the first thing that popped into my head was, we got to get David on the Break It Down show. So the next thing I did, I found your email and you immediately responded. So thank you for coming on the show, and I'm excited to have a chat with you, David.
Oh, yeah, thanks again for asking us. It was Rib. We played a few shows with Rib, and it's nice to be asked by them to collaborate on that song. I think it turned out really, really well. But we hadn't practiced before the show, so I was a bit nervous. I just listened to that song 30 times on the plane.
Oh, nice. Let me start with the beginning. What was David's childhood like? When was the moment when you knew, I'm doing music for a living and that's it?
Pretty early on. I think when I realised I wasn't going to be a professional footballer.
Hey, this is Pete A. Turner from the Break It Down show, checking in real quick to ask you this. John, Scott, and I all support Save the Brave with our time, our location, our effort, and our money. Each month we give a small amount. Do the same with us. Go to savethebrave.org. Click on the donate tab, pick an amount that you want to come out each month, and they will handle all the rest. I stand behind these folks. Thank you so much. Let's get back to the show.
Pretty early on, I think when I realised I wasn't going to be a professional footballer, as in play for Arsenal, I realised that maybe I should go to plan B, which was to be a rock star. Just to do music.
Brighton?
No, Arsenal. I'm not from Brighton, but I've lived here a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But music, my dad is a big Gene Vincent fan, and he saw like Eddie Cochran and all those people when he was a kid. So that was in the house. But equally, my mum liked kind of the Carpenters and stuff. So, which is nice too. But I suppose it was my real introduction, and what really made me want to do music was listen to John Peel show. I'm sure you've heard of him. It's a very famous DJ.
Yeah, the Peel sessions. More underground over here, but the Peel sessions were incredible records to collect.
Yeah, and he was a lot of people's introduction, because obviously this is before the internet, say before my time, like Can and Captain Beefheart. But for me, like The Fall, lots of my favourite groups were discovered through John Peel. But going back to the original question, I think I felt music very early on, and I think you either feel music or you don't. And probably when I was 7 or 8, that's all I wanted to do.
I want to ask you about John Peel a little bit more, if I could just jump in and take us back, because it is, he broke bands like Jimi Hendrix, Susie and the Banshees, all these, The Damned, The Alarm. I mean, everybody who was anybody during the time that he was on. Of course, now in the US, we got it primarily via records that were produced, but you all got it on his radio show live. But did the records also translate for you guys as well?
He was like the internet before the internet, really. Right. So he kind of pointed us in the right direction. But also you chat with your friends and you go to record shops like you would. For us, it's kind of, it's a big shame that he died when he did, full stop. But I often wish that he'd carried on, and I wondered if he'd have liked our band, and because we haven't really got that person who really supports us on radio wise. And in my head, I like to think maybe it would have been him.
Is that possible these days, though? I mean, so often it seems like they just have a pre-programmed playlist that isn't very varied, and it's just,
It's hard to penetrate, and they definitely have their favourites, but I don't know, his taste was so idiosyncratic and not geared toward the mainstream or getting more listeners because he didn't need to. I think we might have fitted into that.
Mm-hmm. Along with Steve Lewis, you're the founding member of Fujiya and Miyagi. And what were the beginnings of the band like?
Well, it's funny. It's kind of well documented to people who know the group how we met. But we met playing five-a-side football, and we chatted afterwards. And he was doing techno, and I was coming from a more guitar-orientated background. But we kind of bonded over Can and Carl Craig. That was kind of the blueprint for the early beginnings of the group. So we started doing music together, and we ended up going to. He's from Chelmsford in Essex, so we ended up going and staying at his parents had like a annex to their house. So we stayed up. We went there to work in rubbish jobs to save up for a first sampler, and it took us like about 3 years to finish one song. And it sounds crazy now, like it obviously wasn't working. So what if it takes 3 years to finish one song? Why carry on? But for whatever reason, we did, and so that was from about 97. So that takes us to about 2000, 2001. Steve went away for a year to Australia. Then our first album came out 2002, but it was still very much like a bedroom record, like it wasn't designed to play live, but we ended up playing live. And that's when we kind of made the leap of becoming more of a group rather than an electronics project. And it changed quite rapidly, really, from then on.
Yeah, when I was preparing for the interview, I read one comment on some of your YouTube songs. And the comment is, listen to Pink Floyd, The Cure, Massive Attack, and Chemical Brothers, then mix them all to obtain your Fujiya and Miyagi. Do you agree with this?
It's funny, I don't think I listened to any of those groups.
Oh, really?
Maybe a bit of The Cure and Syd Barrett era Pink Floyd. You just make the music and you put it out there, and everyone has their different perceptions of where the influences came from or what it reminds them of, and that's great. But no, I think early on we were you could tell our influences, and I always felt too much. I always thought the Noi, the Can, Talking Heads. But I think as time goes on, when we start a song, I don't think, let's try and sound like an amalgamation of the Pink Floyd, The Cure, and Massive Attack, and the other one. It just comes out as Fujiya Miyagi now, so it's quite a nice place to be at.
When you guys are getting your ideas for your songs, I mean, okay, so it's not Pink Floyd, it's not Massive Attack, whatever, but it does come from somewhere. Are you guys bringing in ideas individually in small things? Is someone having a big idea and you all pile on? How does it work for you guys?
There's no one way, really. Sometimes I'll write individually, but that will be like real sparse kind of bare bones stuff, because I'm not a producer. It doesn't interest me, whereas Steve's far more into production. I like just writing songs and the structures and the harmonic content and stuff. Other times Steve might do something in music and I might write the words on, but that's a lot harder to write words on music that has existed from someone else than it is to do it from the ground up. And then sometimes, occasionally, not too much, but sometimes we come together as a group. Jamming has never really suited us.
Okay. So you're not really like a jam band that kind of comes through. You have to work from a foundation. Did you guys learn that in the studio working, or how did you figure that was your formula? Because there are so many different ways to do this. You know, like you think about just all of the great bands that are out there, they all kind of dissimilar way.
Yeah, sure. I think because we started electronic, that's always been the kind of the reset button that we always resort to, you know, sometimes and also financial reasons. It's a lot easier to program a drum machine than it is to pay for a studio to record drums, which are very hard to capture. I mean, we've done that a lot, but equally we love drum machines. So It depends on the album. Sometimes we're accused of always sounding very similar, but I think that's because of our aesthetic is maybe quite narrow in terms of the limitations of my voice and the stripped down nature of it. But we do always try and vary it. So each project, each album has a different feel in terms of how we record it or how we produce it, whether that's more of a live album or more like the last one, Flashback, a lot more electronic.
You're running your own record label, that's true?
Yeah, we've released the last 2 albums and we reissued Transparent Things as well.
Is it hard to run your own label and also writing songs and going on tours?
It's probably not as hard as doing a proper job. It's hard in terms of all you want to do is make up songs, but you have to do all the boring stuff. But when you actually physically get a record that you've made both sound-wise and physically, you know, you do get a real sense of achievement. Also with streaming and stuff, with a band who's not massive or anything, it's kind of important to hoover all that up in order to keep going. So if you're the label, you benefit from all that. If you're not, you don't.
Do you have any other musicians or bands in the record label, or just Fujiya and Miyagi?
No, I did a side project, I suppose. I don't know why people call it side projects, but another project with Ed Chivers, who plays drums in Fujiya Miyagi, called X Display Model. And we released that. That was just a digital release. We would like to, but again, it comes down to costs. And it's always, we want to do the next Fujiya Miyagi one, and we haven't really got access to look elsewhere at the moment.
As you guys try to decide your projects and you look at the finances that are required to put out a new album, how do you make the business decisions? I mean, it's one thing, you know, like a band like Fishbone has always made the artistic choice, and their influence is big, but also limited because they've always gone the way of the artist thing. So how do you balance the business side of, we know we could tour on this a little longer, let's go out, let's expand our market, let's go spend time in this country and tour on this out, you know, how do you do all those decisions?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think for us, the States is, we used to play the States a lot, and there was a lot of interest there and a lot of press, and that's kind of lessened. So it's kind of makes you think maybe we'll give that a rest for a bit. Whereas, for example, in China, there's a lot of interest there, and we played to crowds that twice as big or 3 times as big. So it's a bit trial and error. But also, I mean, Steve is very into his statistics. So he can pinpoint probably down to the 1 or 2 people where they're listening to, in what town, in what Scandinavian country. So you could pinpoint it like that. But I think we just make sure we've got enough money to do the record, get some shows. We've got a good agent in Europe, and it kind of just falls into place, really. And we don't do big tours either.
Mm-hmm. Is it hard to make money on a big tour? Is that why you don't take them on and you just kind of rely on the proven method then? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of see tours as more promotional rather than anything else. I mean, especially with the States, you've got the visas, which are a nightmare to get. really expensive, and then touring's expensive because it's such a big country. So yeah, it's tricky. But most of our, like I say, live stuff for me is promotional on the whole. It's the records that can bring in income in order for us to do the next record.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, where's your favorite place you've ever played? Is it somewhere in Asia maybe, or the United States or Europe or home?
Well, it's funny. Your favorite places tend to be the places that you have your favorite shows in, because even if you've been in that place for half an hour and you looked outside for half an hour and you had a great show, you think, oh, I love that place. But the first time we were in New York sticks in my mind, because we were less known in the UK than we were in the States, and it was always an ambition to go to New York. Dublin was very special because that's the first place that people sung our songs back to us. But there was only like maybe 8 or 9 people in the audience, but they were all like high kicking and singing, and that's a nice memory. Yeah, I mean, probably New York, Paris, Dublin. I'm kind of fascinated with China just because it's new to us, but we've been lucky. We've been all over the place.
You also played with New Order many times over the years. How do you feel when you share the stage with guys like Bernard Sumner or Stephen Morris? Yeah, we've supported them twice, once in Manchester and once in Dublin more recently. It's great. I mean, when I was a kid, one of the first records I bought was Unknown Pleasures. And I remember just listening to it and just staring at the sleeve, and then the white inner sleeve, and then turning it around and do it, and it meant a lot to me. And as I got older, I got more, I had like a gap, but then I got into New Order more and more and more. So when I found out that Stephen and Gillian were fans of what we did, it was, yeah, I mean, it's lovely. And to play, because obviously they've got great songs, and they've got such a heritage of such a history, and we haven't really got that to that extent. But their crowd is a great crowd for us to play to, because there is a crossover.
Right.
It's electronic, but there is a live element, and great opportunity for us. But more from a fan point of view, it's it's the things like that. Like we supported The Fall as well, and they used my guitar on a song called Blindness, and things like that stick in your mind, and they're my favorite things about being in a band, live wise, I suppose.
So one of my favorite bands is New Order. I love the heck out of them. I saw them at the Hollywood Bowl, and their show is a well-established road show. And I'm not sure if they've revamped it since we saw them, because they've toured this show for a long time. But first off, the musicianship is just incredible. They're so tight. In the 80s, when they were out, though, people were pretty hard on them live because there's a lot of keyboard playing, and it's how do you get away from the keyboards long enough to put on a show, right? When there's a lot of things going on. When you see them and you work with them as pros, what are you stealing from that? Stealing is not the right word, but when you see what they do, what are you pulling out and going, we need more of this, we need more of that? Because they have evolved into a band that can do anything. They can be a heritage act. They could go tour on a new album if they wanted. What do you learn?
I think that they've managed to, what's quite insular, introverted music, they've managed to somehow turn it on its head and be quite inclusive. When they play to a crowd, it seems everyone's included, even though the songs are very personal.
Yeah,
which is no mean feat. I think going back to when I read that when they started, because they were using quite primitive synths and they used to go wrong all the time. So I think they were more worried about things going wrong than maybe performing. I don't know. I mean, when I see groups I like, I don't really have my business head on. I just enjoy them for what they are. I mean, the Dublin show, they did 5 or 6 Joy Division songs, which was, I think, the first time they did 3. And that was exciting. To hear Decades live was a real goosebump moment.
It's the show I saw maybe like 2 years ago, they for sure transitioned. I think it was even in one of the encores, and they just did a Joy Division encore, and to have that gear, and obviously you don't want to go through the struggle to, end up with that benefit, but to have those songs just waiting, and it, you know what I'm saying? Like it just hangs there. You're like, at some point they're going to break out these monsters, because Joy Division, for the amount of time they are around, song for song, is as badass as any band ever.
Oh, incredible. And it still feels timeless. I don't know. I mean, it's not just to do with the songs, but obviously that's to do with Martin Hannett's production as well, which adds to that. But also they could just play all New Order songs and everyone would be happy.
Totally. Yeah.
They're in two of the greatest groups of our lifetime. So yeah.
How do they, that's the thing. So one of the things we do in the show is called an album fight, right? And you take two albums of similar length of tracks typically, and you go track 1 versus track 1. So, we might go, Purple Rain's a 9-track album. We put it up against Thriller, also a 9-track album. And then you just go and you judge each round like a boxing fight. In the album fight format, when you go through, a band like New Order is just so tight, but there's something in those songs that translates a timelessness. And we were talking about that. What is it that makes Joy Division, other bands just timeless and other things just absolutely dated and good in its own right? But like, I would say that Pink Floyd, for as great as they are, a lot of their music sounds dated. I can't put my finger on it. Help me put my finger on what it is.
I think it's technology. I mean, that's what the Doors always said, that they didn't have wah pedals because they didn't want to date it.
Right.
I mean, they did with the huge, kind of organ sound. But so the technology often dictates the decade musically you're in, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Like 80s was the era of drum machines, etc. So, but then also I kind of quite like it when you're in an era. So many people try and be timeless, that classic sound, but that in itself is kind of, I don't know, it's been done to death. I think so. Our last record was a nostalgic look back to the music of our childhood. But I kind of think the next one, I'm kind of want it to be now. I want to use all the gimmicks. I want to definitely put it in 2021 or whenever we release it. I think there's something to be said for that. It's quite nice.
Yeah, so over the years, the style of writing and recording has changed. I can sense that in your latest album, Flashback.
Yeah, definitely. I think that one of the things that's benefited us is from not being particularly successful. Because I think looking at similar groups who have been more successful than us and are told they're great all the time, they tend to just do the same thing over and over again, which does well. So then they're told they're great again and they do it again. We've probably got quite low self-esteem and always think that everyone hates us. So we feel like we've got something to prove and we want to go explore new territories. And that's kind of what keeps the interest up, really. Mm-hmm. So there's but also often bands get better at playing their instruments, but makes their records worse.
Yes.
So often I'm really wary of that. And sometimes I try and approach guitar like I've never picked it up before. And just get some pedals and just make odd noises. And often that sounds exciting to me rather than, practicing blues scales for eternity.
Yeah, but I would disagree that you're unsuccessful because you have songs that feature in shows like Breaking Bad or Misfits or How to Get Away with Murder. Skin.
I'm not saying we haven't done well. We have, but if you compare us to bands of similar who get lumped in with us, they have major label backing or big independent backing, and we've always pretty much been very low key or done it ourselves.
Have you ever considered like making a soundtrack for a movie or theatrical show? Because the songs that are in Breaking Bad or How to Get Away with Murder are a good fit for the scenes.
Yeah, I mean, we'd love to. I actually have done a soundtrack with Ed, who I mentioned, who plays drums and is also in a group called AKDK. We did a soundtrack from a film by Anya Stapleton about Lucia Joyce, which is James Joyce's daughter. It's like a quite dance orientated. So we have done that, and I'd love to do more of that. And I'd love to do Fujiya Miyagi have that, because I think we could do it quite well. But again, it's getting the opportunity really, and the timing to do it. If we were asked, I mean, I know it's probably slightly cliched, but I'd love to do kind of like a real John Carpenter type sci-fi soundtrack, one of those, like a real nasty 80s kind of feel to it. Yeah, that would be a lot of fun. So hopefully that will happen in the future.
I want to go back to playing guitar because we have a lot of conversations on Twitter, especially amongst us who are doing this album judging. And someone kind of reminds me of like The Edge, and how he sort of gets lost sonically and kind of gathers these different sounds. And I think we all have to like acknowledge it's not about virtuosity and notes per minute and blues scale type things. His playing is much more unbound. He just is looking for landscapes that he creates sonically. Does that resonate more with what your creative side is trying to do, or is it something even different than that?
I think that's attracted to people who are coming up with their own things and making their own sounds far more than I am people showing off. Although I love Prince,
sure,
who doesn't? But in general, I always think imagination trumps virtuosity. And I think if you rely on technical skill, it can become a bit beige and samey. And this is why often you have schools that teach music, like how to be a rock band and stuff. And I'm just more into giving someone or suggesting 20 groups, listen to them and do it yourself. I don't think you can teach it, is what I'm saying.
Hey, this is Pete A. Turner from Lions Rock Productions. We create podcasts around here. And if you, your brand, or your company want to figure out how to do a podcast, just talk to me. I'll give you the advice on the right gear, the best plan, and show you how to take a podcast that makes sense for you, that's sustainable, that's scalable, and fun. Hit me up at pete@breakitdownshow.com. Let me help. I want to hear about it.
You have schools that teach music, like how to be a rock band and stuff. And I'm just more into giving someone or suggesting 20 groups, listen to them and do it yourself. I don't think you can teach it, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. There is that. And again, you got to come back to how much artistry and how much business sense do you need to blend in too, right? Because if you're so esoteric and artistic, nobody wants to, or nobody's capable of going with you on the ride. You have nobody on the ride with you. And there's a cost to that, right? Like, you have to.
Yeah.
Do you have a sense for where your audience is? Like, this is going to be a leap, but our hardcore fans will go with us, or, do you have a sense for that? Do you care about that?
I do care what people who like us think, but I kind of know that what they really probably want is 10 krautrock bangers, motoric, but we've done that. In bits and pieces, and I'm more interested in exploring places I haven't been to yet. So, and I think generally people come with us, and it would be nice to get new people as well. And what's really nice is over the last few years, our demographic of people who come to see us is a lot younger.
Yeah.
So, everyone's welcome, but sometimes it's nice not to look out in the sea of people who look like me.
Yeah.
Well, it's always nice to not do that, but it's nice to have a mixture. And I love the fact that the younger people are into it, and I feel quite proud of that, rather than just doing the same thing to the same people. I think it's much more fun to try and explore new territories, as I said before.
Yeah, I was 6-year-old when you released your first album, so yeah. In the intro, I mentioned the collaboration with Rip, the band from Skopje. Now I wanted to ask you how that happened, and also, how was the mini Balkan tour with them?
Well, we first played with them, I don't know exactly what year, but it was probably about maybe 5 years ago in Skopje. I always have struggle saying it properly. So,
Don't worry.
And I really like their group, and they're really nice people. And then subsequently, a few years later, this kind of Balkans tour was organised, and we also went to Albania on our own. And we got on really well, and they drove us around. It was just really nice company and easy company. And they were doing their new record, and they were the Ben Farrisfed, who does our sound and sometimes plays bass with us, maybe produced and mixed their last record. So there was the link there, and they asked me they had a song that they thought it might be nice if I sung on it. And so they gave me the music, and I just walked around for like a few weeks with just the instrumental track in my head, and then came up with the words and sent it to them, and they liked it. So it was a pretty simple process, really.
Cool. If it wasn't music, what would David Best doing right now? Like maybe playing football?
I'm a bit old for that now.
Maybe football manager. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I studied art at university, so I did screen printing, stuff like that, printmaking. So maybe I would have followed that path, but music was always, I kind of went there to be in a band, really, that cliche, that kind of art school cliche that a lot of the great bands meet in those kind of places. So that didn't happen for me, but that was my path.
When you look at other musicians, like your peers, what do you see? You're like, gosh, I wish I could do what they do. Like there's certain bands that just, they're different than you and they have success doing their totally different thing, but it's just unattainable for you, because I've talked to a lot of musicians and they're like, man, I wish I had that tone when I grabbed a Fender, Telecaster, but I just, what you do is great, but you see something wonderful. You know what I'm saying?
I always wish I had a more expansive voice, because I love. I was never supposed to sing. When me and Steve started, it was just instrumental. But I always used to write words. But he said, "Why don't you just try whisper like Dama Suzuki from Can?" So I went, "Oh, okay." And it's kind of, so I was never supposed to be the singer. That was never my ambition. I was always just a guitar player. So I'm always kind of envious of great singers, and I'm as well as electronic stuff. A lot of my favorite music is kind of 60s soul stuff and northern soul. And when you hear those voices that kind of really resonate emotion, that makes me jealous. But
yeah,
but nothing really now does. Obviously, it'd be nice to be more successful and be more well known. But I like a lot of current stuff, but nothing makes me go, "Oh, I wish I could do that." I'm quite happy plowing our own field.
Yeah. I like to find the sweet spot in things, apparently, with you, because I keep asking these sweet spot based questions. So yeah, of course, in a band, you want to have more success and everything, but there's also, you get to still have your life and do the things that you want to do, right? Like all of a sudden you can become a slave to your own success. Either like you can't go out, or you have to constantly tour to promote the thing because you're in this expansive, explosive growth era. If you guys kind of stayed at this level right here, successful, able to make money being musicians, all that kind of thing, would that be good enough? Or do you think that you're willing to risk like getting, I don't want to say too big, but risk the freedoms that you have now for more success, more money, more notoriety?
Yeah, realistically, I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I'm quite happy with that. I think that gives us our longevity. We don't have to tour. We've all got young kids. We can't be away for weeks and weeks and weeks.
Yeah.
We can just do, and it feels like now there's a slight increase in interest, and that's nice, but it's not obtrusive. I think it kind of suits us, and I do feel because of that we can make whatever records we want to. There's no one's saying you got to do this record again, or you should do that record. It's only down to us. We have no exterior voices saying in our ears about anything. So yeah,
that level of freedom is sweet. And, not worth a lot to sacrifice,
No, I don't think so. It's I think that's quite special, and we should try and keep hold of it.
Yeah.
What's next for Fujiya and Miyagi? Did you start working on new album, or maybe going back on tour?
Yeah, I've been trying to write some songs, but I need to do the accounts as well. So it's kind of, we haven't really got together. Often we write separately. I think we would like the next record to be more of in performance-wise as a group. So I think the last one definitely wasn't. So I think it's nice to turn that on its head. So I think maybe we'll get together, come up with a few ideas, and then see how they pan out maybe in the next few months, hopefully.
How was your time in Skopje? I'm trying to convince Pete to come here on vacation so you can tell him why he should or should not come here on vacation.
Me?
Bit.
Host.
Well, yes. The second or the first time, I think we've been there. The first time we went there, it was so snowy and so cold.
Yeah, it was so cold. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And then the last time, I know this happens with weather, but it was the absolute opposite. The people are very, very nice, very interested. It's a great place to go, and it's kind of quite nice because often groups just go to the same old places like London, Paris, San Francisco, New York, blah, blah, blah. But it's kind of far more interesting. This is just talking about being a British group. It is to go to Albania or Macedonia or South Korea or Colombia, or Bogota. It's kind of, these are the opportunities that I otherwise wouldn't have had. I probably wouldn't have gone to Macedonia if I wasn't in a group.
Yeah.
But having gone there, I'm really pleased I have. I'm kind of fascinated by the statues. And often they say that, so Pete, they say that they've got statues of like Macedonian heroes, but then also some people say that they're not actually Macedonian. Is that true? Yeah. So that's quite an interesting thing to experience. And I enjoyed, walking around there.
What is it about China? I know you said it was new, but explore that China thing with me where you're called to it. What is it beyond just the newness or the unknownness about it?
I'm probably reading too much into it, but I'm a huge fan of J.G. Ballard, the writer, and he grew up in Shanghai, and a lot of his novels have waterlogged fields, like rice fields or like abandoned swimming pools, and when I was there, or like these kind of new places, like there's a couple of relatively new cities in China that look like they've just sprung up from nowhere, but they're covered in this kind of greenery that looks like just straight out of a J.G. Ballard novel. And that intrigues me. The audiences intrigue me because it feels like it's the birth of something. It feels like it's kind of new, relatively new for them, for groups like us to come over, and it's new for us to play to that audience. So there's a kind of a bit of a culture shock. Like encores always seem to really confuse the audience. It's like, why are you going off? And then you have this kind of awkward silence of like a hay bale, and you think, oh, maybe we better go back on. And then so we go back on, and then they're like, yeah, really happy again. So I don't know, it's just something different. It's very rare that when you go around the world that you experience anything different, because everything's has such similarities because globalization, whatever. But China and Russia and a few other places, you do really feel like you're definitely in a different country, and that's kind of interesting.
How often do you guys call an audible on stage based on the audience's response? Like maybe you vamp a little more and you do some crowd interaction because they're really loving a song. How often does that happen in a show? How unique is each one of your shows?
Well, there's definitely 4 or 5 tracks that expand or get shorter depending on certain constraints or how well it's going. But I think that the thing is, when a show's going well, you just relax. So you become more, we're not naturally extrovert performers, but when it goes well, you just shoulders relax and you just play better. And I might do more things on guitar, or, or Steve might make some more odd noises, or there might be more drum fills or whatever. But it feels like that being cheesy, it feels like a partnership, like between the audience and the group. It feels like you're on each other's side. Sometimes early on when you're in a group, you have to try and impress people, or people go to be impressed because they don't know you and like, who are these guys? But when you've been going for a while, this is not just China, this is just in general. Our audience, the people come to see us because they like us.
Yeah.
So it's like, right, okay, so we're all on the same side, and it makes the show so much better.
Is that different than festivals where the crowd is not there because they like you necessarily, but they definitely want the festival experience? So they do like you. They just may be waiting for a band 2 bands from now,
Yeah, it's kind of I love playing festivals.
Yeah, it's a great venue for bands.
Yeah, it's great. You get people see you who would otherwise wouldn't. Also, you finish early generally,
Yeah.
so you can watch other bands.
Yeah.
You watch other bands, and it's just walking around. It's really nice. But you can kind of see sometimes you have the people right in the front who got there at 9 because they want to see the band who are on at 2 a.m, and they're going to stay there all day, and they're not interested, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But then you just see sometimes pockets of people who, as the set starts, they're like, who are these? And then after a while, you see them dancing. We're quite lucky because we seem to have a physical effect on people who like us. It seems to be quite easy for us to make people dance. So when you can see people dance, things are going well,
Yeah.
Irrespective if it's your audience or a festival audience. It's kind of, oh yeah, everything's fine.
No, I love it. And to have the chance to market to them your sound, your brand of fun and party, it's neat to see it work. Like, it's got to be satisfying as an artist to go, yeah, we still do this. People still can discover us and fall in love with our music and go to the website and whatever. I mean, those are all big wins.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to just stay the same on any level in terms of musically or an audience. So yeah, totally agree.
So you're a big shot rock star up in front of a band on a stage and all these, you get to travel around to China and Macedonia and all these things. But like everybody, you still got to take out the rubbish. You still have to clean your bedroom, all those normal things. So what's something that's just normal in your life where you're like, yeah, some big rock star I am. Here I am waiting in line for my driver's license or something. What's some of the stuff where it's funny to you because of what you do and how notable you are, and yet here you're doing the most mundane thing?
Well, I mean, I don't really think of myself as particularly notable, but I suppose it's I send all the records off, so all the pre-orders that come for us through Bandcamp, I send them all off. So when we're just about to do a record, and I got to I go to the post office with like 200 records, and I got to know the people who work behind the counter quite well, and I invited them to a show, and he brought his wife, and he came to the show, so that was quite nice. So I made a new friend, but it just feels part of the process. It doesn't feel particularly different. I mean, when I was younger, and I still worked in a 9-to-5 Monday to Friday job when we were just starting, and we'd go away for the weekend and we'd play, say, like in Norway and Sweden, or we'd play in Spain, and we'd come back on Monday and we'd be at the desk. That felt like some kind of like a double existence, like a secret life, secret, marginally successful electronic act and an admin. But I don't know. It just feels like all the same thing now.
You started in the late 90s. How do you feel the internet and the technology has impacted the music industry?
Well, initially I was just like, no one's buying records anymore. Where does this leave us? But the reality of it is, so what? I mean, you just got to deal with it. This is the reality, and that's also the pros kind of outweigh the cons. Like the immediacy, people can discover you so much more easily. There's nothing that the obstacles have lessened between the artist and the listener. The only struggle is getting them to know you still. Yeah. But even that's easier with like social media and stuff. So, I mean, it's not my favorite thing to do, and I don't know if we're that particularly great at it, but the options for you to get your music heard have increased so much more. And as we are our own label, we benefit that way. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it's easier to put your stuff out. It's easier for anybody. You don't have to even necessarily play an instrument well, as long as you can program sounds. You can. So it really is completely democratic, but to stand out is still a motherfucker of a fight. You guys should check David's work out on Fujiya-Miyagi.co.uk. I'll put that into the show notes so you guys can find it and support you guys. Is the best place to support you at the website? Is it on Twitter? Is it on MySpace? Where do you want folks to go to consume your stuff, David?
Bandcamp's always good. That goes directly to us. I think that's been a godsend for musicians. And if anyone did want to buy stuff, I will send it out at my friend's post office. So that's kind of the best place. But always good to support local record shops as well. So.
Yeah, and if you guys are trying to figure out where the Bandcamp link is, you can absolutely go to the Twitter site. It's Fujiya and Miyagi, and on Twitter in their bio, it's right there, their Bandcamp, on their Instagram, and you can see everything there and be able to follow what they're doing and where they're going on tour. And if you want to give David some wanderlust, send him a book about your favorite town, and maybe he'll be like, I just can't wait to get to the Green River in Texas and go play some festivals. David, do you want to cover anything else at all?
I'm happy if you're happy. Thanks so much for chatting. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks, David, for coming on the show.
Awesome to have you on. And really, seriously, everybody, I mean, these guys do great stuff. So go support them. Either follow on Twitter or Instagram, buy a record. Make David go down to the post office and see his friends. But this is how bands like this live and survive now. And what these guys are doing is really special. So check it out and let me know what you think. And then maybe we'll get David to come on and do an album fight with us.
Oh yeah, that'd be good.
Awesome. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, man. I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, David.